Now, this model might have been originally tooled up well over a decade ago, but that doesn't mean that it's lacking in features. In fact, you could say it was well ahead of its time back then. The yellow and brown of the track recording coach livery is really quite eye-catching, and it's certainly something that would make this model stand out. Well, hello there, it's really great to see you and I hope I find you well. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcoming you up here to Weir Yard, and today we're looking at an old classic that's just got a new re-release. It is, of course, the Waggon Maschinenbau Railbus from Heljan, and it was out in around 2012 and was really popular, actually sold through quite quickly, and examples are becoming really hard to find second-hand. They go for quite a premium price and are few and far between in second-hand sales. So it's nice to see that Heljan has taken note of this and realised that there is demand for another run of these fine models. They've taken it upon themselves to bring them out in a slew of new identities and different livery examples from last time, and in particular of note is the RTC Laboratory 20 and the brown and yellow track recording coach, and it's this example that Heljan have very kindly sent an example over on loan to the channel for us to take a good close look at. And today we're going to be taking a look through this model and seeing just how good it is and if it matches up to the all new tooled models that are coming through these days. Don't forget that we've got an affiliate link down below to help you find your own version of these models if you really like what you see. And there's certainly some interesting and eye-catching livery options, including the track recording coach, the RTC Laboratory 20, and the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway red example, showing these pioneers of the early preservation age that succeeded in getting no less than 4 of these examples to pass into preservation. So come with me and let's see if this model still shapes up. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model OO gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
Whether you want to model a rural backwater that's clinging on to life in the 1950s with these rail buses providing a welcome lifeline, or maybe you've got a freight-only branch where you want something just a little bit different to break up the monotony of the classes 24, 25 and 20s coming in and out on some short freight trains, and you can put in a rickety wooden platform and put in something just a little bit different to add interest to operations. Or maybe your embryonic preserved railway line needs some traction fast, as all the money's gone on securing the freehold of the line and the track to run trains on, and there's not much left to be able to start running a service, and these rail buses provided the perfect option for preserved lines such as the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway. Or maybe you've got a big sprawling railway like Weir Yard up here, and you want something just a little bit different to run in between the steady procession of freight and passenger trains, and a track recording coach is perfect for that job, just to add a little operational interest. Well, these Waggon Maschinenbau rail cars might just have a little something for you. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this video and subscribe to the channel to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. And we've got a link down below to take you to where we think you can find these models in all the different livery options at the best possible price. But let's get on and take a look and see if this model lives up to expectations, and was it ahead of its time when it first came out over 10 years ago. Heljan's latest release, the BR Waggon and Maschinenbau diesel Railbus, is one that's been on the market before, back in around 2012, and I have asked Heljan and they said that there's no difference between this model and the one that was released back then. It's simply a re-release of the model due to demand. Certainly these were beginning to change hands on second-hand auction sites and through the second-hand trade for some quite high prices, so it's nice to see that Heljan do keep an eye on that and have brought out another batch of these with different livery options and running numbers, so that these will cater for those who perhaps missed out first time round, and also those who maybe have got some models from the first batch but wish to expand their fleets. The diesel rail buses themselves owe their origins back to the 1920s and 30s in Germany, where the railway companies were really quite eager to provide a lifeline to loss-making lines that was beginning to really struggle, and with their much reduced operating costs, these rail buses actually were incredibly successful on the continent. But it wasn't until the 1950s that BR decided that they would investigate the possibility of trialling a similar design on loss-making railway lines in the UK, with the hope that perhaps it could turn them around as well. A number of different manufacturers were approached, and the actual end products that were built, 5 from each of the manufacturers, weren't actually very recognisable compared to their German counterparts, not least because BR specified a much higher floor level. So whereas the German versions were able to stop pretty much anywhere like a bus and pick up passengers, even from places like level crossings or even the line side, these built for the UK versions were limited to stopping at the existing stations. They did provide a great lifeline, but it was really too little too late. And with the changing whims of the political headwinds, it really was the writing on the wall for these rail buses and the lines that they were intended to serve. A number of these found their way into the early fledgling preservation scene, and they were quite useful actually at providing a level of service for those cash-strapped lines on exactly the same basis that they'd been intended for by British Rail 10 years previously. Now, I'd like to thank Heljan for very kindly sending over this example for review, and we've got catalogue number 8714 in the rather interesting BR brown and yellow as the track recording car DB 999507, and this is one of 2 interesting liveries that Heljan are releasing from this batch, the other being the RTC red and blue livery, although it should be noted that the base model is not changed to represent the departmental versions, and certainly the RTC version was built specifically for that role and was never converted from a passenger carrying version, but the cost of tooling up separately for these would have been too much. So I quite agree with Heljan's approach to provide them with the livery and allow the modeler to make the choice whether they wish to buy them or not. It's 21 pin ready, as were the initial batch, and I'll be doing a full DCC fit using the Train-O-Matic decoder in the latter third of this video. We've also got full working lights and sprung buffers. The box is the typical sturdy Heljan fare, which really does protect the model quite well. Looking inside, we've got a leaflet here, and this gives us some information about how to get in for that DCC fit. And we've also got the potted history of the rail buses as well, which is well worth a read. Delving further in, we've got an additional detail pack, and these are the only user-fitted parts that come with this. Everything else is factory applied. So we've got the couplings front and back. These are a representation of the prototypical style couplings, and we've also got a couple of additional steps as well. Everything else is there on the model from the factory. Sliding it out of the internal clamshell It's quite striking just how heavy this model is. Certainly it's on a par with some of the other offerings from the Heljan stable, such as the Class 26 or Class 27. It's definitely really quite heavy, and I'd go as far as to say it feels slightly heavier than their Class 25 offering, which in itself was still pretty capable on the tracks. The model has just the 4 wheels underneath, and these are all driven from the centrally mounted underfloor motor that you can see the bulge of just there. There's no NEM pockets or anything for slimline tension lock style couplings on these, and really, to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a photograph of the real ones being hauled or hauling anything other than themselves. And with that level of overhang, I think it would have been unworkable to provide these with any kind of coupling. And due to the Spartan nature on the underfloor area of the models, it would have just marred the look for any and all modelers. So I'm actually quite glad that Heljan have chosen not to bother with that. Looking around the model, we've got this flush fit glazing, and I really like these wrap-around side windows. It's something which it was a shame that they were unable to tool up on their Class 28 for the original as-built version with wrap-around windows, but it's been done incredibly well on this Railbus model. The rest of the windows are completely flush to the sides, and we've got the correctly whited out parts for, I think that's the toilet compartment, which we've got in there, and the centre doors, these would slide open to one side, very much a predecessor for a lot of the more modern rolling stock that came after these. There's plenty of glass real estate to be able to look in on that fully fitted and detailed interior, and I really like the way that Heljan have chosen this low slung motor underneath, which is really quite well hidden. It doesn't come into or compromise the internal passenger compartment, and with the internal lighting, that is definitely something which is a great bonus and plus. The seats look pretty nice and prototypically accurate, and certainly when you do go inside this for a DCC fit, it might be well worth fitting these with passengers, because with the saloon lights activated when it's running, they will be very visible indeed. The yellow and brown of the track recording coach livery is really quite eye-catching, and it's certainly something very different for any model railway that would make this model stand out. They're also producing it in the aforementioned RTC livery, and also the more normal BR green, and a version that ran in preservation with the then vogue in the early 1970s, late 1960s for preservation railway specific liveries. The roof is really quite a shiny silver, and this is something which I would say would probably work quite well to be toned down with a black weathering wash. Don't go overboard, these wouldn't have got all that filthy, but certainly a light wash of black will really bring out some of this detail, as the dirt will cling around all this roofing detail, such as these exquisite rows of rivets, and really bring it out and bring home just how intricate and complicated the construction of this roof is, that is captured perfectly in model form. We've got the roof-mounted horn cluster, and these actually hide the body screws for getting inside the model, which is a really good idea, and certainly something which we also saw on their Class 14 release. On the buffer beam, we've got sprung buffers to the correct pattern, and all of the buffer beam pipework is fitted as standard from the factory, and these are quite springy, so they will handle a few knocks and bumps quite well. We've also got the central hole there if you wish to add the additional couplings in. And correctly, we've got the windscreen wiper there, quite slender and nicely picked out. It's part of the moulding for the windscreen, but it's really nicely done, and a nice touch to just pick off the windscreen wiper with a tiny bit of black paint to correctly fit that in for the driver's compartment. Looking in there, we've got the seat, and the entire control panel fitted as it is to one side, and that does look incredibly well detailed, albeit picked out in just the overall uniform grey colour of some of the interior. Looking at the other end, it's an exact duplicate pretty much again, and certainly this model would benefit from having a driver figure in there. And I also really like the way that they've captured this quite distinctive bulbous shape of the lower body side as it curves in to meet with this quite hefty, riveted together chassis member that runs the full length of the model. There's plenty of really quite small printing on the side here, and certainly I can't read that on the viewfinder, but it'd be interesting to see just how legible that is under close-up inspection. The black finish is much more of a satin black than a gloss or a matte, and it works really well. Again, a really great basis for some light weathering, and as a track recording coach, this would find pride of place on more than just a backwater branch line. These would be seen up and down the main line as well, so there's never been such a great excuse to get a model in a livery such as this. The demarcation between the different colours is really quite nicely well done, and I do like the window surrounds picked out in black, and then the additional drop lights finished with this silver. It's little details like that that really do bring it alive and make the most of this incredible flush glazing. The shape of the dome on the front roof is really well realised. Again, quite a complex shape with lots of compound curves, and then at the top here we've got the destination board. Now this does light up, but on this particular model there's no destination written in there, although I believe that those in the BR Green livery do feature prototypically accurate destinations front and back, in keeping with the branch lines that the real versions would have been employed on. Underframe detail is very Spartan, with just what looks to be the underside of the engine represented and some radiator and fuel tank details, and these wheels in this integral and very utilitarian fabricated W-irons, and they really do look quite sharp here. We've got flat-fronted disc wheels, and these are fitted in the same colour black, it looks like, as the rest of the underframe, which is really quite nice, and chemically blackened treads. The model picks up from all four wheels, and with all the weight that it's got in here, it will make sure that this does run pretty well, even on some steep gradients, and we're going to be putting it through its paces on Weir Yard later on in this video. On the front and rear we've also got these additional lights for the directional lighting, and I will show you later on the full internal lighting that this model features, and it's all independently controlled on DCC, where you can use F1 through to F5 to be able to turn each of the lighting functions on independently, or on DC it is handed to the direction that the model is travelling in. Looking on the underside, one of the things that does strike me is that it's quite easy to get the wheel sets out, either for cleaning or for changing these out for perhaps a different finer profile set if you wish to. There's just 3 screws that holds in each of the axles, and also gives us access for being able to service the gear chain that's in underneath here. Just be a little bit careful, and you can lift out the wheel set, and this exposes the pickups quite readily if you need to clean these. These play on the tread of the wheels just on the top, and do have a reasonable amount of spring, and the phosphor bronze is actually folded in such a way as to give quite a lot of strength to that, and a central groove which adds to that strength and provides a means to try and clear some of the black gunk that can sometimes get caught up on pickups that play onto the running faces of the wheels. There's a number of different gears in here. Again, this gives us really easy access to be able to maintain these and lubricate them if necessary, although they do come ready lubricated from the factory. Putting it back together, really is quite simple. The wheel set drops in, the keeper plate goes over the top, and then just do back up those 3 screws and we're done. In terms of weight, the model comes in at 471 grams when weighed, and that really is quite a punch, especially when you look inside and realise that there's nothing protruding into that cabin area. It's a really well designed and greatly realised model from Heljan, and that weight is all down here in the chassis, giving it a nice low centre of gravity and ensuring that when the model runs on DC out of the box, it really is sure-footed. Even on some slightly tarnished track, I had no issues whatsoever. Now, Heljan do recommend that the model be run in around 30 minutes in each direction when it's new, just to get all the gears to bed down. But in all honesty, this model was super smooth out of the box, and I didn't see any real need that it needed that, and certainly as it runs it's only going to get better. Heljan mechanisms by and large are really good, and this is up there rivaling even the Class 05 shunter, which I tend to use as my benchmark against which all other models from all other manufacturers are kind of rated. Such is the smoothness and positivity of that mechanism, and certainly this is a worthy contender for the title of smoothest mechanism from Heljan. Next up, we're going to come to DCC Fitting the model, and this is an area which perhaps isn't quite for the faint of heart. Certainly, Heljan do like their models that clip together, and whilst this model does have some screws, there are also some hidden body side clips, which can be just a little bit of a nuisance if you're trying to get into this, especially if you don't have particularly long fingernails. First up, we just need to carefully remove the horn clusters and put them safely to one side, and these will expose 2 screws that we've got on top there, and we need a small jeweler's crosshead style screwdriver just to undo these. And you might notice that doesn't actually release the body, and the reason for this is those hidden body side clips. Now, first of all, this handrail here needs to be just teased out to be able to allow the body to be able to lift off. You only need to get this out at one end. I'm just going to very carefully give that a pull, and on the other side as well. And this is a step which isn't mentioned in the instructions, it has to be said. And that is always something which I find is a little bit of a struggle. Now just be careful, because the rest of the handrail can drop out, and it might actually be better if it does feel a bit loose, so that you're not sacrificing that to the carpet gods. Just to take that out and put it to one side. Now the model actually parts down the centre here, which is a really interesting way of making use of the detail on the body to minimise any kind of obvious parting points. Now I'm just going to carefully manoeuvre this. We need to kind of get in underneath that door, but the door is recessed back into the model, and if you use anything metal then you're likely to damage the livery. And this is something which, I must be honest, it's probably the most frustrating part of the model. Alternatively, squeezing top then bottom whilst applying some force does appear to have got that side to come free. It's just simply a case of slowly working it out. And again on this side, it's not a great design for getting the body off. And there we are, it's just finally shifted, and you can actually see where the clips are. They're nothing to do with this door, and sometimes it's a little bit misleading that the instructions do say about getting in the gap at the door, when actually the clips are to one side. And I'm just going to very carefully get this all the way off. You'll feel it just jams in the center. We can get our thumb in, and this entire top lifts free, and you can see there just how slender that glazing is. Put that to one side, and then we've got all of the electronics up in the roof, and it's a really great way of doing it, with the wiring just going down behind where the toilet compartment is. And you can see here we've got some amazing detail on some of that interior, and this would be the perfect opportunity to add seated passengers inside here. To get at the DCC decoder, we're going to need to undo these two screws. It's just one there and one there. And this is necessitated by the lack of height underneath the roof. To keep everything hidden, Heljan have elected to put the decoder socket in here, and it's actually upside down. And when you think about the height needed for the 21-pin decoder, it does seem to be the most sensible way of doing this. However, there's not much slack on the cables here, and what you will find is that it is necessary to very, very carefully unplug some of these top cables to give you just enough slack to be able to turn this board the other way up. And then you can just lift up the circuit board enough to reveal the 21-pin decoder socket. Now there'll be a blanking plate on there. I actually already went ahead earlier on and fitted the 21-pin decoder, and it's really, really easy. Just very carefully, and this applies to whether it be a decoder or the blanking plate, just wiggle it free and then fit the decoder of your choice. This is the 21-pin Train-O-Matic decoder, making sure that you note where the blank pin is for lining up with the blanked out pin on your decoder. You can just see it there. So very, very carefully line that up, gently apply pressure, rock that decoder into place, and then it's a reverse of the process that we did to get here, making sure that you carefully plug back in the wires that you've had to release in order to get the circuit board up and out. And then we retrofit this piece. And then we put the body back on. Now do pay close attention to which way round it goes. Theoretically you can put it on either way round. There's nothing that stops you from clicking it all the way in, but you need to make sure that these whited out toilet style compartments match up with this space at the back there, just to make sure that all is as it should be. Gently slide the body back on. You can get a thumb underneath these doors just to prise them out if you need to, and then gently squeeze it all back into place. Once you're happy that that is clipped back down into place, then it's just a return for 2 screws in the roof. Don't over tighten these. Refit the horn cowlings. These are just a very gentle push fit, and then refit the handrails that we took out earlier on. These just very carefully slide back into the holes that they came out of. Then the model is ready to go to the programming track. Out of the box, the DCC decoder ID is set to 3 as standard, but we can change that to any number that you like that fits with your numbering system, and then it's off to Weir Yard to put the locomotive through its paces. When it comes to running, the model performs exceptionally well, and I put this down to all of that low down weight, which really gives it a huge amount of grip, and of course as well makes sure that it doesn't lose electrical power from the track. even going over points where you might expect it to perhaps cock a wheel or get hung up on some of the insulfrog points. I didn't have any issues with it whatsoever, even down to some quite low speeds. And I think all that extra weight just makes sure that it really is firmly pushed into the track. 471 grams really is a lot, even for a locomotive. So for something that's intended to run on its own, it really is fabulous that they've been able to get all that in there. And certainly below the floor level as well is just an incredible feat of design. It took in all the twists and turns of wear yard, really with no issues whatsoever, getting up to 5% gradients with no issues at all. And out of the box, the running really was quite smooth and silky, and this is definitely something that will add some variety to a modeller's fleet. Either modelling down at heel, end of life, branch line, clinging on using the W&M Railbus to try and keep costs down, or maybe to bring a passenger service to a preserved line such as the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, and number 64 is available in the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway Red, which is in keeping with the early preservation effort. You could add passenger services too to perhaps a predominantly freight-only operation. You could imagine the kind of ramshackle, rickety, wooden-style halts that you could really quite easily slip into a corner of an otherwise freight-only layout to add some extra operational interest. Liveries such as the RTC blue and red, as Laboratory 20, or this track recording coach in its rather fetching brown and yellow are definitely something that could be seen literally anywhere on the network, be it freight or passenger or both. From the ramshackle back lines to the main line too, these would have got pretty much everywhere, so they're a very versatile beast. So we turn now to the scores, and first up is build quality, and by and large I thought this was a really well put together model. I really like the way the motor and transmission fits together. It's nice and snug below floor line, but really does work wonders with that small motor packing quite a punch. And my thoughts are that if this had couplings, it probably would be one of the best performing of locomotives. And it's a shame in a way that all that power and grip is just for this rail bus. The roof has an immense amount of detail, and even though it's a little tricky to get apart, I really do like the thought that's gone into the way that the parting point on the model is hidden by the demarcation between the two different colours, which on the green rail buses would also be the point at which the fairing along the side is, which means that you don't see how the body goes together, and it preserves the really sleek line of this underside that fits closely into the chassis. There isn't really too much to note going against it, but it must be said that the handrails on this example did seem to have some excessive glue on them, and that was something that at the moment you DCC fit it, that glue really didn't serve any purpose whatsoever. It's also really easy to get marks onto the yellow base of this model, especially when trying to get it apart, and it's just a little bit of a shame in what is otherwise a faultless model, and I'm going to give it a 9.3. On running quality, it really does perform well. This is another benchmark mechanism from Heljan, and it took in even up to 5% gradients, which is far more than's ever recommended for model trains, with the greatest of ease, helped by that 471 grams and that super smooth mechanism, which even though they recommend running in, really didn't need it. There's nothing to fault, so I'm going to give it the 10 out of 10. On DCC Fitting and Innovation, it really does have some nice lighting functions, and you get full control over these with 5 different lighting functions able to control everything that the model has to offer. The interior of this really is exquisite, and there's plenty of space and glass real estate to be able to fit and enjoy a full complement of passengers. On a model such as a track recording coach, What we need is a whole bunch of men in suits and maybe some overalls and a shirt and tie, of course, keeping the standards up, that would be in there on maybe a jolly upper branch line just to see what's what, or perhaps actually knuckling down and getting the job done, recording the track work. Either way, it's a great opportunity to get some cameos into there, and it's a lovely rendition of this model with no marring from that underslung motor, which does not protrude into the saloon area at all. The only downside for me, quite simply, is getting the body off. The screws hidden underneath the horn clusters really are perfect. They're hidden away but easy to access. So I'm not quite sure why it needs those almost inaccessible clips just to the right of the doors to hold everything together, and this might have been an area that Heljan could have considered perhaps small magnets or something like that, just to improve the experience of getting the body on and off. It isn't too bad, and certainly not one of the worst that I've come across, but it is a little bit tricky and you have to be careful not to damage the paintwork, so I'm going to give it a 7.9. On accuracy and quality of finish, really, this is an exceptional model. When they first came out the first time round, I was struck by just how different they are to anything else on offer on the UK market, and Heljan has kept with that on this second release. The fact that they've not had to do any remedial work does speak volumes about how right they got it the first time round, and I'm going to give it a 9.9. On value for money, the RRP for this model is just a shade under £200, but looking around, I found them retailing brand new for just under £170, and we do have a link down below to help you out in finding those, with all liveries currently available, but they are selling quickly, so it really does dispel any thoughts that that price is too high. It isn't. This is in keeping with what you get, which is an exquisite model with some really lovely features and a really well thought out construction that keeps that huge open saloon free for putting whatever people you want inside there, and certainly this would be perfect gracing any layout, be it old or new, freight or passenger, mainline or branch line, and I'm going to give this an 8.4 on that value for money. And that gives us an overall score of 45.5, a respectable score for what is a truly great offering from Heljan of an unusual prototype. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative, and don't forget that we've got a link down below to take you to where you can find your own version of these models in all the different livery options available. But do hurry, because they do appear to be selling really quite quickly, and it's always a good sign that these things sell through. There clearly was a lot of demand for these, and Heljan has to be credited for taking note of that and putting out another production run, and hopefully maybe we'll see them again in the future, because certainly there's a lot going on with these to add a great deal of interest to any modeller's layout. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Just what do you think about these models? Maybe you've got one from the first batch, or maybe you've picked up one from this batch too, or maybe this is your first time dipping your toe in the water of these quite unusual prototypes. Do leave a comment down below, and it's always great to hear from you. And until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying please like, share, subscribe, check us out over on Patreon, and until next time, happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.